systematic racism in mind. I think that racism and the criminal justice system affects Black and Latino immigrants by the criminal justice system being harsher or using prejudices to, I guess, be more rough. An example of this would be when the Robert Bautista case. He was arrested in 2009 for a crime that he did in 2002, which was carrying an open container of gasoline near his own vehicle. And then they arrested him when he had completed his parole. And then it also says that an hour before his DHS hearing, they concluded that it was a third-degree attempted arson, and it was also an aggravated felony. And then that meant that he had no chance of judicial review and had to be deported. This is just one example of why I think that they would be most affected. On question 3, I think that proponents of California's Proposition 187 relied on racial imagery to promote the bill was through, I guess, racial ideologies or stereotypes. An example of that would be when, like, let's see, they used people's fears of, like, Mexicans taking jobs or using welfare as ways to try and convince them for their bill. Not only did they use that, but they also used, like, I guess, making them into a criminal type of way, just viewing them as criminals. I think the bill itself isn't really relevant, but the ideas of it is relevant today. I know for a fact I've heard people saying stuff like the whole Mexicans using welfare. That's a big one I've heard. Even a segment on 60 Minutes. So this shapes the U.S. racial order because it like supports the stereotype of the aggressiveness versus his white counterpart who got minimal coverage, even though it was the same accusations. On question 1 for chapter 4, an example of where an African American athlete's behavior is depicted differently than his or her white counterpart who engaged in the same behavior would be the football case where Christian Peter and Lawrence Phillips, Christian being white and Lawrence being black, both had similar cases that involved assault with women. And basically, Christian got coverage in local news. It wasn't as big as Lawrence, who got national coverage. And so on question 4, on chapter 4, tells me to define controlling images. And controlling image is like a representation of a race, class, or gender, and they influence how we think on those different races. One way that stereotype is promoted by media and controlling images are reinforced by stereotypes, and reinforce inequalities would be that it gives a show called Fresh Off the Boat, which I have watched, and a big stereotype in that show would be that Asians are smart, and they have this small kid who's this prodigy type kid. I believe that supports that stereotype.
I think the
stereotype reinforces inequality, because being smart's not a bad thing, but it just like groups that whole race instead of viewing him as one person or a single person.